Okay. Whenever we put the kettle on in our house, my father's response was, "I'll have half a cup of tea." The man must have drunk 5 times as many half a cups as the rest of us drank full cups. The half a cup was usually followed not much later by a hotter upper. Séamus died from lung cancer 4 days after my parents' 39th wedding anniversary in 2011. They'd been together from the age of 19, married at 20 and 21, and my mum was his carer in his last years of life. He was only 60 when he died. He'd been in hospital for weeks, and the whole family, my brother and sister-in-law, my aunts, uncles and cousins, were all taking turns to sit with him, to spend some time with him before he died. On the day of their anniversary, he was still able to talk, eat and drink a little. And when he realised what day it was, he sent us all away for a few minutes. And when we came back in, he was sat in a chair with a little side table set out in front, with a small pot of tea, 2 cups and a biscuit. And he said proudly to my mum, "Happy anniversary. I got you a cup of tea." It was a precious commodity normally reserved for the patients, but he tugged the nurses into getting a pot and a couple of cups brought in for the occasion. Of course, Séamus only wanted half a cup, but he topped it up with a hotter upper not long after. It was a sweet moment in the midst of a very bleak time, and not long after that, he slipped into unconsciousness and we lost him. Séamus and I were very alike in some ways, and that often meant that we rubbed each other up the wrong way. But I also shared several of my dad's interests, wildlife, cooking, and DIY in particular. He was also a keen gardener, and after retiring through ill health, spent a lot of time tending to his vegetables and flowers and watching the garden birds, putting out wood shavings and cotton wool for them to build their nests with. He had a love of verse, particularly Robert Service and Rudyard Kipling, and the cremation of Sam McGee was a firm favourite, which was often recited at parties. He also enjoyed Western films, especially those starring John Wayne, and country music. He was the youngest of 4 siblings and grew up in literally the middle of Ireland, out in the country. He loved his brother and sisters and had a particularly strong bond with his elder sister, Maura, who some of 10 by 9 have heard of before as the Bloody Nun of camping fame. My mum also recalls that when they were going out together, he would call his sister Dinah from the payphone on a Saturday night, and the two of them would fire off at each other all the funny stories and jokes that they'd heard in the week. He was a firm favourite with his nieces and nephews, and my parents would often have them for visits during the school holidays, when he would sit on the couch and have his toenails painted or be taught his 1, 2, 3s in the kitchen. He never did get the hang of the Irish dancing, but his toes still twinkled from all the nail varnish. He was a messer. We have very few photos of him as a child where he's not pulling a face of some kind. But if you ask anybody else what my father was known for, I imagine most people would say his sense of humour and his sense of mischief, which was a mile wide. As kids, we received many a small electric shock from his various requests to just hold this wire here for a minute, and were jumped out on more times than we can count. Once in my 20s, I came home to find my parents in creases of laughter on the couch to discover that they'd made me up an apple pie bed. The practical jokes I would have found it hardest to forgive were played on the people he shared digs with in his youth. Postmen, having to rise early and dress in the dark, often found they had accidentally risen in the middle of the night after he'd set their alarm clocks for 2 a.m. and on top of that put them inside a tin bucket to amplify the noise. I'd have killed him. I need my sleep. But I think the prank he put the most work into has got to be the Middleton Rare. My parents and their friends would often get together for a meal and a drink. Séamus liked a whiskey, sure don't we all? And one of the men in his group of friends had been given a bottle of Middleton Rare. Whenever they would go round to Gabriel and Angela's, Gabriel would bring out the precious Middleton Rare, but only for show. Nobody ever got a drop. The seal wasn't even broken on the bottle. One evening, after a nice meal, settling down for after-dinner drinks, Gabriel brought forth the Middleton Rare from its box, only to discover that the seal on the bottle was broken and the whiskey was nearly gone. There was shock and horror, swearing and outrage. Who would have dared to open this bottle of whiskey and drink it out from under his nose? Séamus Garry is who. After allowing Gabriel to have several close encounters with a medical emergency due to apoplexy, the actual bottle was produced and my dad, choking with laughter, revealed the full story and Gabriel climbed down from DEFCON 2. It turned out that the almost empty bottle contained not Gabriel's precious Middleton Rare, but a very weak tea. Séamus had gone to the trouble of sourcing an empty bottle from someone he hardly knew. In the week leading up to the dinner, he spent ages experimenting with tea bags, like some medieval alchemist in the kitchen, diluting the tea to match the exact colour of the whiskey. He plotted with Gabriel's wife Angela that when the coast was clear the day of the dinner, Séamus would run over to the house to do the old switcheroo. The afternoon of their visit, Angela gave the nod. He nipped across to swap the bottles, and the scene was set for their practical joke. The thing I'm most proud of him for is sitting through the whole meal without saying a word, knowing what was going to come next. I'm not sure Gabriel ever entirely got over it, but even Gabriel had to give the man an A for effort. He put a lot of work into that prank. On the morning after he died, when we came home from the hospital after being there all night, my mother and I found ourselves in the kitchen, boiling the kettle. There'll be no more half a cup, she said. And I think that after the last few days in the hospital, that was the first time I really felt his loss.
Sinead, thank you so much. That was nothing short of brilliant. Thank you. I've said this before. I find something wonderful when someone can introduce you to someone that we'll never meet, we'll never know, and we feel we come away with a glimpse into their personality and the impact they've had on people. So thank you very much. You can be very proud of yourself, and I'm sure he'd have loved to have heard that story. And what a brilliant prank!
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, he put a lot of effort into that.
And Middleton Rare, now I wonder if Podrick is any of that now. Is that very expensive?
200 quid.
Oh, right. Oh,
give or take. Yeah.
Fair enough. And did that guy ever open it?
Do you know what? I don't know if he ever did. I almost changed the names to protect him, but I don't think he deserves it.